Randon Hewitt. He's going to talk to us about A/B testing, and I have seen this presentation, and you should stick around for it. It's very good. So I'm also going to heckle because I happen to know for a fact that he has two grammatical errors in his presentation that he didn't fix. So sorry, Randon. So sorry. Take it away, bro.
All right. Let me first start by setting some context. My name is Randon Hewitt, Software Development Manager for Motion Industries. And what is Motion Industries? What do they do? So Motion Industries is one of the world's largest manufacturing and industrial parts distributors, right? I always tell people you go to Walmart whenever you want to get groceries, and you come to Motion whenever you want to build a factory. So we sell things like hydraulic presses, steel sheaves, and bearings, things of that nature, right? So we're a pretty big company. We have around $8 billion in revenue. We're headquartered in Birmingham, and we have maybe 150 to 200 software development technical staff across the company. And I'm one of the development managers for the part of that staff that works on Motion.com, right? So Motion.com is the primary front-facing website for the company, right? And that is what this entire presentation is about. And we're going to be talking about how A/B testing helps transform the way that our team was able to make business decisions at that company. Okay. So we're going to start with the problem, right? So how we were trying to solve the problem of not making enough money at every second of the day all the time. The second part we're going to talk about is the solution, right? So feature flags and A/B testing in general, and kind of building upon that. The third step is we're going to talk about some of the real life results and some of the different cases that we went over as a team, right? Different kinds. Then we're going to do a quick live demo of one of these feature flags, kind of just changing some of the code in motion.com, right? In front of tons of people. And then we will be doing the impact. So we'll be talking about why are we doing this and what type of impact does it actually have on our business. So before A/B testing, right, we had several different problems, right? We had a lack of data-driven decision making. So we had a lot of data. Everybody has data. Everybody's got Adobe Analytics or whatever your platform is, and we're gathering metrics on all these various different parts about Motion.com that exist that a ton of different people can see, and we're gathering those metrics so we know exactly what's happening at, how many orders we're getting placed at every hour of the day and exactly how much revenue we're making every single hour of the day. And, that was great. And then we'd do our development, and then that would just happen, right, periodically. We also had a pretty modern DevOps practices, not super ultra modern, but I mean, we have Kubernetes clusters, CI/CD pipelines, where we push the main, it tries to go out to prod, that kind of thing. So you see changes just happening periodically all throughout the day. And then that data, it's pretty difficult to line that up with exactly these types of changes. And the changes got smaller and smaller and less and more iterative. So it was more and more difficult to nail down the data to the actual changes that were happening. We also had and that was one of the biggest problems is nailing it down for the validation of is it actually having the impact we want, right? As these changes got smaller and smaller. And then proof that the changes actually helped. And I'll explain why that was such a big problem for us and our company specifically later. But what we did have is pretty modern day dev practices, really fast rollbacks, stable infrastructure, and most importantly of all, growing sales numbers in general. We could ship really fast, but we had no idea if what we were shipping was, the right thing in general. So we had a false positive problem. What do I mean by that? In the manufacturing and industrial parts sales industry, there is a constant, we have an issue where it's not digitally mature. So what does that mean? It means that our standard user, not 100% of our users are using technical solutions to place orders for a variety of our, for our industry as a whole. So we would have hundreds or thousands of these orders that are getting placed through paper that then get represented on motion.com at a later date, or they just pass through in other ways. One of the biggest avenues, that's one of our biggest avenues for growth is convincing these paper-based customers to swap to a digital, ordering process, which is motion.com. So we're going to get growth year over year. Also, it's just not digitally mature in the first place, and there's a lot of different aggregation that needs to happen in the industrial manufacturing distribution industry, right? So we're probably about 4% of the industry total, and our biggest competitor is Granger, and they're probably 7%. So that means there is a ton of room to fuse these businesses together and then grow them over time. So we were going to get growing sales numbers essentially no matter what we did. And we saw that, and it reflected in the data. So you fuse these two things together. We have really small iterative changes that are very difficult to pin down to the data piece. And then you have these constantly growing sales numbers, right? It is very easy to say, well, we did better than last year, so we must be doing the right thing. But that's where the false positive problem really steps in, because we could do things that would actually hurt our business and we wouldn't really know. So how are these decisions made beforehand? So we would start out with a hypothesis, typically brought to us by product, and it would say, let's make a new button on the website that is going to allow users to export everything in XML, right? We really want that capability because some of our older customers, they use a variety of different products, and we know that they integrate with XML at some points in time. It would be really, really nice if they could do that, or Excel, or whatever the different platform is. We debate for a really long period of time, typically weeks, going back and forth with the business on the specifics, on the technical implementation, as well as if it's actually going to be impacting a large enough subset of our customers for it to be an effective change. And then we make the decision, and this is typically done by whoever is the most important or the loudest or the most aggressive person in a room, which is not always the best way to make decisions overall. And then we would build it. We would commit, 2 to 3 weeks of a team's time to building out these kind of smaller, more iterative features, and then we would, push it to production, ship it out to all of our users, and then we'd measure our overall sales, and it looked great. Year over year, we're seeing those numbers going up. And then if we didn't do any changes at all, we'd see those numbers go up. So this didn't really help us know if the pieces of the development practice, the features that we were choosing, were actually causing the effects that we wanted it to have, right? What do we prioritize next? What do we do next? We don't know. And the reason we don't know is because it always looks good all the time. So what fixed this? Or what helped us, resolve some of this issue in general? Feature flags, right? That is the foundation to the actual implementation of experimentation. If you want to have A/B tests in general, the first step is to have feature flags. Okay, what are feature flags? They're basically toggles that you can have, or Boolean, enum values, whatever, selecting from a variety of different options, and then each one of those options is where you can point a percentage of your users. And whenever you direct those users to that, you can change their experience. So for example, I could have a motion.com user that has a cart full of they typically have a cart filled with 500 items all the time. One of our biggest users, someone who does enough business that having an entire development team dedicated to that user makes sense, economically, and then have a custom view for that user specifically that flips on with a switch. Do we do that? No. And I don't think it's a great idea to have custom UIs like that, but that is just a random example that I just made up on the spot. So what tool do we use? We use LaunchDarkly specifically for our feature flags. You don't have to use LaunchDarkly at all. There's lots of different solutions to this. You could even do it in-house if you are a glutton for punishment. You don't have to though. But anyways, so I'll be going over some of the specifics on this. If I had more time, I could go into more of the specific of implementing the SDK in the different parts of your stack and exactly where to put it and blah, 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 but we don't really have that much time. A PowerPoint's not typically the best platform for going over that in general. But no, there is code behind the scenes that does this. Sweet, and you have a server side, and we have our client side, and we also have part of it in our API side. So what is the foundation of feature flagging in general? So we talked about toggling it on and off and giving different users different experiences, but this goes further in the fact that you also, if you really want to have a flexible system, you need to have segmentation. Some ability to group people together and then make it so that you're able to apply these flags to those groups flexibly, right? So for us, we do that by user, customer, if they're in a corporate account, if they're in a device, if they're using a certain type of browser. There's a huge number of different facets that we can aim at to then give those types of users a specific user experience, right? This allows us to have very precise targeting, and it allows us to build features for specific segments of users and also apply it to specific segments. And you can do that pretty flexibly with most of the modern day feature flagging pieces by injecting a variety of user data into whatever the platform's data warehousing piece is. So what does this entire process look like whenever you're going from feature flags to A/B testing, right? Now that we can show people a different experience with those feature flags, and we can aim at specific user groups to be able to give that different user experience, you can also start to run experiments to see, well, we showed these people experience A, we showed these people experience B, which one is working better, right? So one of the examples I always tell people is if you had a store, this is similar to nailing up a sign one day, seeing how many customers walk in that day, and then on the second day, you put up a different sign, you count the number of customers that walks in that store that day, and then you see which one of those signs is working better. This is exactly that type of thing in a much more precise, large scoping way, right? But yeah, so we target our users with those feature flags, and then we have to instrument the metrics in the application. So it means that whenever the client side is actually being operated against by the user, you have metrics that are being fired up into your platform, and this is hooked together with those segments that we had that were being targeted specifically, and that's all being monitored in whatever the platform is that you're using. So in our case, that was launched darkly, and it has a variety of different metrics capabilities that it can use, and then we would collect that over a test period, and we would aim it at specific metrics, so things like conversion rate, total order volume, time to click for certain operations, number of clicks, that kind of thing. And that would measure whether or not experience A or B is working better. We'd then ship 100% to 100% of our users, or whatever the segment is, that new experience. So this is a very simplified, oh no, that red line is over feature. That says feature, guys. But this is a very simplified diagram showing this, right? So you have your web traffic, right? And in this case, this is a separate example where we show a pop-up and we don't show a pop-up. User places order, user does not place order, add to cart event, add to cart event. Basically saying it fires up those events to that metrics platform, and then your business/decision makers can then go in and look at that analytics platform, and their job becomes trivially easy whenever it comes to actually deciding whether or not they're going to choose option A or option B, because all the data and metrics is lined up in front of them to allow them to do that. So now you guys know A/B testing like the back of your hand, right? You know about experimentations, metrics gathering, you have feature flagging. Now let's talk about a few real-world examples that Motion has specifically gone through, and we're going to go through 3 different kinds of test case scenarios, right? So the first one is going to be a win. So this is where we added in the option to be able to download from your cart to our shopping cart, right? Now, this had a very outsized conversion rate increase, and I assume this has to do with some type of local law where you have to have a listing of the parts that this specific industry needs, and they were able to export that, send it to the director or whoever gives them approvals, and then they were able to ship it through. Something along those lines. I don't know exactly what it is, and I don't have to know. That's the whole point in A/B testing. But we ended up increasing our conversion rate by almost 6.5%. And we were very, very confident that that was a large enough percentage that it is definitely the better option to show it to all users in all cases. And that's what we did. It also applies to a really important thing to consider in general whenever you're doing these A/B tests is not every part of your website is hit by every single user all the time. Just like we were talking about those segments and how those different segments can be looked at and viewed by different people. Your actual website does that as well, right? So, you have, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 1,000 pages. Certain users, they go and they look at a specific product, they add it to it. Other ones just want a mass entry into your cart and then just have a bunch of different stuff, right? All these are e-commerce examples because that's what I work on, but you can imagine it for your own industry and apply it. So keeping that in mind whenever you're gathering the metrics and doing the math on whether or not it's applying to, your entire revenue, your entire bottom line, very important. Okay, option number two, and this is another scenario. That first one, super easy. We were able to say we made this change, it had this positive effect. This is a exact opposite scenario where we made this change and we had the exact opposite of our intended effect. So aggregate duplicate products, specifically it was our user has an item in their cart, they add a second version of that item in their cart. It's the exact same item. We would show a pop-up and it would say, do you want this to be two separate lines in your cart? Or would you like it to be one option with two in it? People really did not like that pop-up in general. A lot of people, and by a lot of people, I mean we have around 10 to 20,000 users every week or so. That's what, 20 to somewhere between 20 and 50 people every single week were just saying, I'm done. I'm not even going to try and finish this checkout because I saw a pop-up, which we've all done at some point in time. We just reach a certain level where the two made decisions, I'm out. So that was what was happening, probably. We don't actually know the specific reasons, and we don't have to, which is great. That's the whole reason, is now we don't have to go back, try and come up with a hypothesis and a theorem based on the data that we have. We have the data. It is linked to these users. We know it's not working. But A/B testing was allowed us to not ship this out to 100% of our users, and the ones who did not run into this situation, now they don't actually have to, no, we don't have to worry about us having a fall in sales, do that in general. So that's one of the key cornerstones is you can celebrate your failures with A/B testing, and without it, you wouldn't even know. So case study number 3, this is a little bit more complex, but stick with me here. We have a third-party search provider, right? We were connected to that third-party search provider specifically, and what we did is they were gonna, or the scenario is they were telling us, hey, we're gonna do a big update to this search indexing. It's gonna change the way that your customers see it, and we're just gonna apply it to everybody. We're just letting you know. And we responded by saying, we'll wrap a feature flag around this. We'll A/B test both of these two scenarios, and we'll see if these changes are impacting our sales. And then you'll have that as a feedback piece, right? So we did this. We wrapped it around, and we ran the test, and we found that they gave us around a 2% uplift whenever they made the update. Fantastic, right? But we also saw that there was an issue with some of our users where they were actually having a lower amount. We were able to reach back out to that third-party vendor, let them know about those specific users, and then they were able to make secondary modifications to it, a follow-up that increased that lift to 3.13. Now, small numbers, right? But whenever you work with big numbers, those small numbers don't really matter. Because if you're working with hundreds of millions of dollars in sales, a 1% lift to all of your users is extremely valuable. So anyways, we ran into this scenario. The power of A/B testing and in general experimentation in this case is we were able to have our third-party vendors be held accountable for what they were actually doing and for the results it was having on our users. So it allowed us to validate with them, and they loved it, right? If you ever provided software engineering tools for any devs or for any users in general, the idea that one of those users comes to you and says, I'm going to give you a data point on whether or not the changes you're making to your product are working or not working, of course they're going to take that into effect, right? Especially when you're one of their bigger corporate sponsors or bigger corporate customers. They want to, build the best product they can, and us bringing that data to them means that whenever they make changes, we can be one of those top tier first class citizens in their, the changes that they're making. They're taking us into account because we're bringing ourselves to the front of that line. All right. So everybody loves a live demo, right? So what we're going to do is, we talked about the download cart button right before. What we're going to log into the website, and then we're going to see a user, right? And then we're going to use one of these feature flags just to show them having a download cart experience be removed or added in real time, supposedly. All right, first we'll start by logging in. This crowd, you seem like you want some hydraulic accumulators. I could tell, right? Each one of you needs higher PSI and some press. It's going to be pressing, shaping some steel. I can tell. Yeah, that's probably what this is. And yeah, let's do this one. So right here, I have a general cart experience, and my lovely assistant would flip the flag. Boom! You might not have seen it, but this button just appeared out of nowhere. Ooh. So we have for anybody who's more technical, we have the SDK integrated into both our client and our server side and also in our backend API. And this is live streaming back and forth between LaunchDarkly, and it's literally feeding updates whenever there's a change to the flag on both sides, so they could change the flag without refreshing, without having to do another login, without having to do any of that jazz, and it's gone again because he flipped it off. That's exactly what happened. But yeah, but yes, we can stream those updates and changes back and forth for each one of our users in real time without having to cause them to have to do a refresh, log out, log back in, or cause some type of mass uh, you know, experience degradation. You are messing with this, right? Okay. He nodded his head. He is messing with this. All right, perfect. Sweet. So that shows, though, that was my specific user. We're not doing this for all users in prod right now. That would be not great for a presentation in general. Uh, but we could if we really wanted to. Okay. So now we have talked about the foundation for it. So what is it? We have talked about some of the different use cases for how it's helped and how you can flexibly use it to, increase revenue slash hit the bottom line more effectively. And now we're going to talk about some of the, effects of it, right? We're going to be moving towards that in general after the demo. So yeah, afterwards we were able to make our decisions without jumping into it and just having it be made by gut feel. So no longer is the loudest person in the room the person who always ends up making the decisions. It's very clear that this specific scenario, for example, is not working, and this one is because the numbers are backing it for the specific users we're trying to use it for. And that has tremendously increased the confidence in A, the dev work that we're doing, and B, the decisions that the business is making. The weeks of debate without resolution. So it was very difficult whenever you have the numbers always increasing in every scenario because we're not in a digitally mature industry. So now we don't have to constantly argue on whether or not the changes that we made were working or not working. And the actual benefits of whose feature is benefiting our website slash company more is no longer a conversation. You don't have to worry about things getting so political, right? It's very difficult to zone in on, oh, this group made changes to the search index, and this group made changes to the login process, and now our sales went up. Who made the more important change? Those kind of conversations don't happen whenever you're measuring everything. You don't have to worry about the false positives from organic growth, so that's specific to our industry, but I'm sure there's a lot of other industries where they're experiencing the exact same thing as, some of these older industries become more digitally mature as our landscapes change. Uh, and then there is a way to measure specific fine-grained feature impact. So that's super important whenever you're talking about these faster rollouts. You have a modern Kubernetes infrastructure. Everybody's using Kubernetes, but it doesn't have to be Kubernetes, but a modern day CI/CD process where these updates are happening in real time, very quickly, multiple times a day. You really need to be able to lock the data down to those changes specifically. Because if you don't really know. And then, yeah, we are able to avoid the situation where we're just monitoring the sales and hoping. Yep, and then we're able to we're able to shorten the cycles by having that data at hand and having it locked to those specific features. And we're able to separate the signal, so increasing sales, from the noise of the situation. And then we're able to constantly measure and learn from all the different features that our company is actually implementing. So over time, the business leaders who are focusing in on the search index, or they're focusing on the checkout process, or they're focusing in on performance. We can see which one of those is actually having a very positive impact on our users and increasing sales and revenue and making their lives easier. And we can focus in more dev time on what matters. So we took the guesswork out of our development process. Some of the more specific lessons that we learned from this. So I would really recommend whenever you're working with A/B testing, it's kind of contrary to what you would think initially, to start with a high traffic page. And you'd say, why? Well, it seems like it's higher risk. Not necessarily. But what it does, because you can make changes to those types of high traffic pages, that does not actually hit the bottom line in any way. It could be small, visual, whatever the thing is, but it allows you to check and see how the data flow and the data pipeline is working between your website and the actual platforms that you're using. Because with these these distributed systems, it can quickly go haywire the way that you have those user segments plugged in and the way that they're feeding in metrics to those platforms. So starting out with something with higher traffic makes those problems much more obvious. So I would start out with those. You have to be able to run your tests for a long period of time. And the only reason for that is you need to get a statistical significance to it to be able to determine whether or not the changes you're doing are actually having the intended effect, or if it's just new and it brought attention to it. So for an example, if we changed the entire way that our website looked from top to bottom, instead of red and black and white, our main colors, we're gonna swap to gold and blue. And everybody's gonna love our new gold and blue website. You might swap out the branding entirely and have an increase in sales just because it like lights people up and they're like, whoa, this is different than I expected. And just that little bit of attention causes them to, finish their order. But then if you did that all the time, then they just get exhausted. They're like, oh, I had to find everything all over again. I had to get used to this tool all over again. And then you also lose the branding, consistency over time. So you don't want to just instantly say, oh, this looks fantastic, and then shoot, fire from the hip and then just have it automatically be added. So measure it for a period of time until you get a certain amount of statistical significance. You need to measure what matters. It's very easy to measure things, everything in the world. These events are super flexible. There's no limits to what you can do with it. So make sure that you're aiming for things that actually have real business impacts. So things like the conversion rate for whether or not your customers finish the thing that they logged on to do. Things like the revenue for the day or for the segment that you have, and the engagement. So things like, are users actually using our search, or do they just type in the exact ID for the product and then use that instead? Yeah, so you can don't test everything as well. That's a really big problem where we'll be like, oh yeah, we're gonna make this change and we're gonna change the padding on this button from 10 to 12 pixels. You don't have to test that. Most people don't know. And even worse, you do a test like that, and then you do see a change. And now the business gets it in their head. 2 pixels is what matters. You really don't want to mislead them with that. So try and make the decision to, I do lean towards testing more as opposed to less because you want to have that information. But sometimes you can force false positives into your situation by constantly testing every single small thing. So yeah, the sample size matters. So low traffic features take longer, and it can take so long that it's impossible to use this type of functionality in a way it's intended. So an example would be, let's say you have logged in users and there is 7 of them that use this specific product suite. And this product suite is only used by those 7. Now those 7 make your company $10 to $50 million a year. If you feature flag something that's used by 7 people, you will never reach statistical significance to be able to determine, based on data, whether or not this is working or not. It is actually much more effective to just go and have conversations with those 7 people, right? So don't feature flag everything, and also just think about where you are feature flagging and how many people you are using it for. This is not a tool that is meant to be used for 1 to like less than 20 users. Seasonality is a problem. So if you have, let's say for example, It's probably not good if you're an e-commerce site to do a test with the old feature, gather your data from Black Friday, and then compare it to the next day, and then say, well, sales dropped, our feature sucks. It probably doesn't. Black Friday is just a higher traffic day. Yeah. Seasonality exists. So, and that applies to all different types of industries, right? And all different types of events. Um, so you have flag sprawl. So you can have a ton of these different flags, and this is just housekeeping. You need to make sure that you're aware of all the different flags that you have and that you're actually getting rid of those flags over time. There needs to be some type of process for cleaning those up and changing them, right? Uh, because at some point in time, you're like, oh, 100% of users are using this, and we don't need this flag anymore, then just get rid of it. And unless, of course, the business wants to change it potentially for certain segments, that kind of thing. There's lots of valid reasons to keep them around forever, but any good developer is trying to look for ways to delete all the code that they've ever written, just in general. Uh, yep, and then this is a super. You have these SDKs that are gathering metrics in multiple different points in a giant distributed system, right? You typically, if you know you're servicing a certain number of customers, you need to be very careful with the way that you are sending those events up to the primary platform. Very important to not duplicate events or get them crisscrossed with other people who are servicing. So you have your Kubernetes deployments, you have your 500 VMs or your 500 different pods that are each in one of those deployments. It's very easy to get those. So make sure that you implement it correctly from that events perspective, and that goes back to that first point where that's why you want those higher traffic. That way you see the problem as it's happening. And then something small tidbit, we were able to use GUID-based visitor IDs just specifically for anonymous users. That way we were still able to connect them to these different sessions and events that were happening. So you're able to aim those at guest users specifically. So yeah, and this gives why? Why does all this matter? Because it gives us a huge competitive advantage over people who are not integrating A/B testing into their process, right? So tens of thousands of our customers have a better experience every day because we've been using this for around a year now, and it's had a lot of different benefits. And I really like helping those people every day. And the second reason is because we make way more money whenever we actually use this technology and use it to decide what type of experience is better for users. This is just for our sales, specifically the number 9 million, for the 3 use case scenarios, right? And it's not the actual additive amount for each one of those. I am only doing it based on if we implemented it all versus if we implemented it all with A/B testing. So this is the difference between implementing them all blindly versus using A/B testing, right? And with numbers like that you can easily report back to the business, it is very, very easy for a technical team to validate why they exist and why they might need more developers for various different features and everything else. So there's that selfish benefit if you're looking for a reason to do A/B testing. And most of our competitors, they are not digitally mature. They have not integrated A/B testing heavily into the entire stack that they're working with. So and if you're in your industry, that might be the case as well. And if it is, this is a massive step for you to take in taking a hold of the decision making for your business and making those big plays that ends up causing your company to spiral forward into becoming the main player in your industry. Yep. And then for us specifically, since we're in that industry, all of our direct competitors are also suffering from that false positive problem. And so we're able to escape that while they potentially stay in it. Yep. So it gives you precision, speed, a huge increase in your return on investment, and it increases the partnership between you, the business, and development. So the reason it does that is because I don't know about you, but everyone in this room has probably developed something that never hit prod at all. Now, that's very demoralizing. No one likes to think, I just spent 6 months of my creativity and everything else, I poured my heart into this, and no one's ever even going to see it. Versus someone who's like, okay, well, we did deploy this, and we deployed it to all of our users. People see this thing. I don't know if they like it, and I don't know if they hate it, but they see it. And then this upgrades that to, I spent my 6 months working on this. I really poured my heart out into it, and now it is making the company this amount of money. This percentage of users are able to use it. I'm helping 700 people a week finish their orders, which makes their days a little bit better, makes our company a little bit more money. So everybody, it's really just a win-win situation for everybody involved in general, and it increases the confidence that you can have in business decisions overall. Because now you're able to measure each one of them. And if there is a bad decision, because everybody's had this before, where a business partner is like, we're going to be creating this new thing and it's going to be the coolest thing on the block. And you're like, that's a terrible idea. That is 7 pop-ups in front of the user right before they finish placing an order. 7. Have you been through 7 pop-ups lately? They're literally going to think that they're being hacked. But anyways, now you can prove that with the numbers behind it. So those little small incremental gains make a huge difference. So what have we talked about? We talked about the problem, right? Specifically, the false positive problem that we had experienced in motion specifically. And we talked about the solution. So we talked about feature flagging. We talked about A/B testing and experimentation. We talked about some of the different results. So we went through 3 different case studies showing a flexible usage of A/B testing and exactly how it gets applied to a variety of different industries. And then we also talked about the impact. So how is it actually impacting the sales number, the revenue, and our users' experiences, right? In a digitally immature industry, experiencing organic growth, you can't trust your overall metrics. You need controlled experiments to separate the signal from the noise. And that is the number one thing I'd like anybody here to take back, is that your development doesn't matter if you're not making the right decisions. And that's all.